at the front lines of law, leadership, and public service. From the courtroom to the classroom, Attorney Karen Jimeno brings sharp legal insight, academic excellence, and a voice that has guided national conversations. Attorney Mike Toledo, a seasoned public affairs strategist and legal mind with years in media, corporate leadership, and government reform. Together, they bring law to life with experience, integrity, and the courage to ask hard questions. Two minds shaped by the law. Two voices trusted in and out of the courtroom. This is ABOGADO.
Good evening. You're watching ABOGADO, where the rule of law meets the heart of national discourse. I'm Attorney Mike Toledo.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. Tonight, we take on an issue that is legal, political, and deeply personal for many Filipinos.
Same-sex couples in the Philippines continue to live without the legal rights granted to their heterosexual counterparts. Is it time to change that?
The question before us may challenge tradition, law, and morality, but it is also a question of rights, recognition, and equality. Let's take a look at our proposition tonight.
Love knows no gender, but under Philippine law, not all love is treated equally. For same-sex couples, marriage isn't just a symbol. It's access to rights, inheritance, hospital visits, joint ownership, parental authority. Without it, equality remains out of reach. Does this violate the principle of equal protection? Are civil unions enough or just a compromise? And can marriage equality exist in a nation shaped by deep cultural and religious beliefs? Can faith and freedom coexist? Can society evolve while respecting moral diversity? Tonight, we confront a question that touches law, identity, and nationhood. Should same-sex marriage be legalized in the Philippines?
Joining us to advocate in favor of legalizing same-sex marriage is Attorney Darwin Angeles, a respected constitutional rights advocate whose work has brought him before the Philippine Supreme Court in numerous high-profile cases. As a senior lecturer at the UP College of Law and a Shieveling Scholar in Human Rights Law from Queen Mary University of London, Attorney Angeles brings a deep understanding of constitutional principles, equality, and international human rights norms. His expertise makes him a compelling voice for the legal recognition of same-sex unions under the law.
Now, on the other side of the dialogue is Attorney Marilu's Arzaga-Mendoza, Senior and Managing Partner of the Arzaga-Mendoza law firm. With a distinguished legal career spanning decades, including teaching corporation law and practicing in both the Philippines and the United States, she brings a firm grasp of Philippine legal traditions, family law, and policy. A magna cum laude graduate in economics and an alumna of the UP College of Law, Attorney Arzaga-Mendoza is well positioned to articulate the legal and cultural arguments against redefining marriage as anything other than a union between a man and a woman. She is also a member of the CCF Alabang Women to Women Core Group.
Here's how tonight's discussion will unfold.
We begin with the opening statements. First, the speaker supporting the proposition presents their position in a focused 2-minute statement. Then, the speaker challenging the proposition offers their perspective, also within 2 minutes. The conversation then unfolds through 2 key subtopics. For each subtopic, the guest supporting the proposition presents their insights for 2 minutes, followed by a 2-minute perspective from the guest challenging the proposition. After both perspectives have been presented, we move into the open exchange, a 6-minute free-flowing discussion where both guests ask questions, share points, and respond to each other directly. Once both subtopics have been explored, we proceed to closing reflections where each guest is given 2 minutes to summarize their key messages. And finally, the hosts step in with their own questions. In this 6-minute segment, the guests respond, clarify, and deepen the discussion, ensuring no critical point is left unexplored.
We begin with your opening statements. The question, should same-sex marriage be legalized in the Philippines? Attorney Angeles, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So in my opinion, same-sex marriage should be legalized. The fact that it is not allowed right now under a system of laws is unconstitutional. Why is that? Because the Philippine Supreme Court in Republic versus Marilu Manalo already ruled that marriage is a fundamental right of every human being. That said, that means every person, by virtue of one's inherent humanity and human dignity, has the right to marry the person of his or her choice. And if that person that they choose so happens to be of the same sex, then I think it is a right that should be given to them. To deny them of that right is to deny them of their inherent human dignity. So that is my position.
Very concise. Thank you, Attorney Darwin. Attorney Marilu, your opening statements, please.
Yes, thank you. I do not agree on approving on same-sex marriage, considering that same-sex marriage, of course, does not actually exist in our country. Not only based on our law, but the cultural and the religious underpinning. Every law always assumes a certain kind of morality. And when you speak of morality, you speak about what's good and what is bad. So right off the bat, there is a divine design for the creation of a man and woman. And if you speak morality, you speak about the standard of God. And God does not approve or uphold same-sex marriage. And so the law must not be codified nor prepared for it.
I like this very concise opening statement.
Exactly.
Let's now focus on the legal dimension. Does the absence of same-sex marriage laws violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution?
And what specific rights, such as inheritance and medical decision-making or joint property ownership, are same-sex couples currently denied? And do existing legal brevities go far enough? Now, Attorney Angeles, your perspective.
So I think that the Equal Protection Clause guarantees to every person the protection of the law. And marriage is one such institution that is provided for by law and confers statutory privileges to those who are able to contract it. It is a special contract that is enshrined in the family code. And there is no essentially a purpose or compelling interest to deny a certain segment of the population of a right that is both productive from a societal perspective and intimate on a personal level, because it recognizes a very personal choice on the part of the individual. As I said earlier, marriage is a human right. And to be a person which has the right to think, has the right to decide, has the right to express oneself, one's identity, one's gender identity expressed through marriage, through that choice of who they want to marry, I think is something that the law should protect. And the fact that it is being granted to heterosexual couples and denied to homosexual couples solely because of their gender identity is a distinction that the law is not allowed to make, and that is unconstitutional in my opinion, because it is not a distinction that is germane to the purpose of any compelling state interest that the state is entitled to prohibit. Now, as to what legal rights are that they are deprived of, I think you've already enumerated, Attorney Mike, several of them. Inheritance rights, for example. There was an issue on insurable interest that was recently clarified in 2020 by the Insurance Commission, who opined only recently that as a matter of life insurance, same-sex couples can avail of life insurance. But to complete the list, I have here the right to marital privacy. There are certain income tax deductions that married couples can avail of. And you also have the rule on marital privilege as an incident of marital privacy under our law of evidence. Of course, the list goes on, and the more I can go on all about it.
And we're sorry, Attorney Darwin, but you're out of time. But I think you can raise some of these points during the open floor for questions, which we'll have in a moment. But for now, Attorney Marilu, your perspective.
Yeah. The principle of equal protection law admits requirements. And one of the requirements you just mentioned, and of course, simplistically speaking, one of the most motivating as far as that requirement is concerned is equality amongst equals. Now, how could you possibly say that there is a uniform application of the law if it does not belong to the same class? Now, you specifically talk about marriage. What's the purpose of marriage? Marriage is what? One of the purposes is procreation. And there is a DNA, or what we call genetics of civilization amongst humanity. It's a man and a woman. There isn't any denying of such. And what laws or what rights are violated or significant in connection with this? Whoa, there are lots of laws that are certainly violated, and you have to come up with a new legislation. Like, say, for example, inheritance, between this union, the visitation in hospitals, the closest kindred, and that is not, and so many other laws that are negating its application.
And as mentioned by Attorney Karen, this is the time that you can ask each other questions. And then at the same time also we can come in perhaps if there's a need to clarify certain things. So you may respond, rebut, or clarify, and you have 6 minutes to have this exchange. Who wants to start to ask the question?
Ladies first.
Ladies first, yes.
Ladies first. Marriage is a very sacred institution. It's an inviolable social institution, and it is a divine design between a man and a woman. In fact, the enabling law of the Republic of the Philippines states so in the family law, although there are eyebrows raised that the Constitution does not prohibit. Well, I say it does not grant either. So if you, in conjunction, take the Constitution provision vis-a-vis the enabling law, absolutely, it does not allow so. Secondly, again, as I previously mentioned, every law assumes a certain kind of morality. And specifically here in the country, in our country, of course, you are not compelled to adopt anything, but it is from the get-go, our country is founded on Christianity. And the culture, we may not be that so liberated, but of course that's of no moment. Fact of the matter is the framers of our Constitution, if you will remember the preamble, we, the sovereign people, invoke the Almighty God. He's the source of such morality, good and bad. And the design between a man and a woman is such. And digressing from such design is definitely a corruption of God's design.
Right. Thank you for that, Attorney. My riposte is that, well, one view of looking at law and its source of authority is what you said, morality. That derives from the natural law school, yes. But we must also be cognizant that the Constitution also ordains separation of church and state, which means that by design, our system of laws is secular as opposed to ecclesiastical. We are not proposing that the church change its views. In fact, I even assert that the church is supreme in its own dimension. And the Catholic Church can, of course, have its own doctrine as to how it views its marriage. But our law on marriage is a secular institution, even though it's also provided for under the Constitution. And as you have said, the Constitution does not prohibit same-sex marriage. In fact, it is only the law that contains the stipulation that marriage is between a man and a woman. That being said, and law being a secular institution like Congress is at liberty or has the power to actually change it if the society so demands. And on that point, I jump off that another source of legal vitality is the will of society, which means that if society is ready to recognize and grant rights to a distinct minority, an act that has been done by our government to recognize rights to several other minorities, the people with disabilities, indigenous peoples, senior citizens, and the like. The law can be changed by Congress.
Thank you. I'm a bit speechless. They're both so good, no? And it makes me proud, partner, because we have both UP lawyers here. Actually, our table right now is for UP lawyers. So, but it makes me proud. Very well argued. Do you have any other questions before we move on to another subtopic? I think we've covered the issue very well because
very much
I
so.
think the point here that Attorney Darwin makes also is that you can legislate this because it's not strictly restricted by the Constitution.
And if I may add, one argument that we raised in the Falsis case, which was, well, it was not tackled by the Supreme Court because the petition was dismissed for lack of standing, was the recognition that if you trace back the laws before the Family Code, under the Civil Code and even under the Old Spanish Code, the definition of marriage doesn't include the words man and woman. So if those laws were effective today, then actually same-sex marriage can be a reality. So I leave it at that.
Just very quickly, you mentioned, you did not mention man and a woman categorically, but is it implied? Because at the end of the day, if you follow science, essentially there's a male and there's a female.
Yes.
There's no in between. So would it be, the reason it was not specifically mentioned was because there was already implied. It's something that is already judicial knowledge or a fact already.
Why did the Family Code specify
This
that
time
marriage
should
is
be
a
with a man.
union between a man and a woman? So I think those...
One of the things that we must not be obliterating in our discussion is one of the significant purposes of marriage is procreation. And you talk about science, there can't be any procreation between the same sex.
Yeah, but what about other countries which have legalized surrogacy? So this has allowed a lot of same-sex couples in other countries to have children of their own. Like,
But again, surrogacy does not even come into the picture because that definition of marriage, if you delve in any further, it's between a man and a woman, husband and wife. It's a permanent union. It's a permanent union and it is designed, again, as I said, and you agree with me that in every law there is an assumption of morality. And even in the very Constitution we have, there is an invoking of the Almighty God. So that's, I premise my point. And you're right, Attorney Karen. Yes, it needs a big-time legislation. The whole aspects of our legal system shall definitely be rocked.
Should we allow same-sex marriage?
If I may, so to what Attorney Mike said earlier, even though one can say the definition of man and woman is implied in marriage, what I would say there is that, and I think we all know our statutory construction principles, verba legis, or the language, is the index of intent of the law. Meaning, if it is not mentioned in the law, then that is not what the law intended. And therefore, I say the open-textured nature of the previous definitions of marriage, since it does not limit marriage to a man and a woman, opens the door to same-sex marriage. And I also remember that you mentioned the preamble of the Constitution. After the preamble mentions the Almighty, the Constitution, the preamble goes on to say that the wish of the sovereign Filipino people is to build a just and humane society. And I think that's where I will focus.
Yeah. So perhaps this fits very well with our next subtopic, which talks about cultural, religious, and social impact. So let's explore the cultural and religious dimensions. Can the secular state allow same-sex marriage while respecting religious convictions?
And how does Filipino society evolve towards inclusion without alienating moral and faith-based perspectives? Perhaps we could ask Attorney Darwin to begin.
Yes, thank you. So I think it has already been established that the government, being secular in nature, is free to enact laws that can be moral from a certain perspective, but also inclusive, to include and protect the rights of minorities. Because it is in the government's interest to recognize and provide protections not just to the majority, but also to the minority, because that is the source of the sovereign power that is delegated by the people to the government. So, in my opinion, yes, religious beliefs can be used by the government as a factor, yes. But I stop where it is being used to deprive a basic fundamental right to a group of people, and they are suffering from or as a result of said deprivation. Now, I do understand that there is an ongoing debate on the public perception of same-sex relationships, and of course, this will definitely affect whether same-sex marriage can be legalized or not. It is a fact that political will definitely be a factor. And as I said earlier, it has to come also at the time when society is ready. But I think society is ready because we live in a world where people can now be open to freely identify themselves as LGBTQ. And as a consequence of that, to recognize their inherent dignity as a human being, let us give them the right to marry the person of their choosing.
Thank you so much, Attorney Darwin. Good ending on that point. Attorney Marilu, you have 2 seconds.
Yes.
2 minutes. Not biased, no? 2 seconds only, but no, 2 minutes.
Well, the whole point that my compañero is sharing with us is such that, you know, I don't see the ripeness of the acceptance of this in our culture. And of course, it's for me, it's insignificant even to consider the ripeness. What it speaks of is I go and dwell on the family as a foundational institution of our government. Now, you say it's secular, the framers of our Constitution, the laws. Nevertheless, I think this is not just something current. It has been talked about and discussed in the Senate and even in the Congress. And still, the whole thing has been pigeoned. And see, if I deduce something there, meaning those people are not even ready to go ahead and proceed with it. Legislating it, hey, why not? But the ripeness of it, you don't even consider that. I go ahead and emphasize the basic institution of the society is family. Now, you say about the Constitution was framed to ensure that the state governs the interest, the protection of a family. And you know, there is a universal genetics or DNA amongst human civilization, and that is a man and a woman.
Okay, thank you so much, Attorney Marilu. And now we go to the open exchange. You already know the rules about this. You can ask each other any questions, and if there's a need for us to somehow come in and clarify or pursue a certain point, we shall. So who wants to ask the question
I
this
do
time?
want to ask.
Please.
Yes,
Please.
Attorney Marilu.
Yeah.
Attorney, you came here with such information and postures. Where did you derive your authority?
Well, I derive my authority based on how I've been brought up, my upbringing, my own personal faith as well. So you've mentioned the influence of religion. I was brought up a Catholic myself, and even the Catholic Church has been more open. Of course, they haven't changed their views on same-sex marriage yet, but right now, I mean, it's public news that we had Pope Francis recently, unfortunately, pass away, but he was one of the most liberal popes who spoke favorably about the rights of the members of the LGBTQ community. And I think that is a positive sign of that societal movement towards openness and acceptance. And I think I might have, if I may return a question to you.
I may, if you
yes,
would.
yes, go ahead.
I like your statement. So your authority is the culture and your religion. And
Yes.
absolutely you believe in God.
Of course.
And the Word of God is the Bible, which says and opposes same-sex marriage.
From a certain perspective, I'd say that. But I come from the catechism and the theology that our God is a loving God.
True.
Who treasures expressions of love. In fact, Jesus Christ said that his only commandment is to love one another as I have loved you, right? And that is a gender-neutral expression of love. And that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, very well. Likewise, He is, I agree with you, a loving God. He is likewise a just God who punishes. Punishes what?
Yes.
Sin. And this is a sin. However, the loving God comes in to give you and I grace for the sins that we commit.
Perhaps, yes. Which is why I think it's important to see same-sex unions and even marriage as not from the perspective of sin. Because sin is there when you wish ill will or inflict damage or harm to another. When people congregate or come together in marriage, you don't want to inflict ill will or hatred or even bad faith or anything. You want to build your own family. And that's and to your point also, I think that's part of their dream. It's part of the gay couple's dream to build their own family. I think, and I remember, I wrote it in my notes, that one of the disadvantages that they have is they cannot be a fully Filipino homosexual. Why? Because in order to marry the person of their choice, I know I have a lot of friends, they have had to go abroad, change their citizenship, and invoke the laws of friendlier jurisdictions just so they can be themselves. So why not let them be who they are in our home country? Let them be the homosexual Filipinos that they were born to be.
Attorney, sin is a sin. There's no other qualification. And what is a sin? It is a transgression of God's word. And the Bible says so.
That is true. And I just accept, though, I just take comfort that our God, the God that Jesus taught us, is a forgiving God.
It is,
Okay.
absolutely. And that is why the sin premised on it, you can change and seek for forgiveness.
Yes. And I
Because
do,
of His grace, it will be granted to you.
Yes. And I do hope that if the government does legislate same-sex marriage, then our God and Christ and the Holy Spirit will find it in their eternal love to forgive those politicians who do enact such measures.
But that is-
Let me interject. My question would be to have an argument along the lines of a secular state. So if we have citizens that are non-Catholics, non-Christians, non-Muslims, so you can have an agnostic or atheist. So the questions on morality may be something that is not
Subjective.
exactly, it's not necessarily something that would be a premise for them for purposes of enacting a law. So how do we address that?
As far as that's concerned, I think we eliminate marriage of same sex on that one. I would agree on a certain point of what? Civil union. Of course, you say, well, it's purely semantics. It's the same. No, it's not. There is going to be the absence of marriage and legislation. You know, you are an individual. We are in a country that is it's not Russia. It is a democratic country. You can do whatever you want to do. But again, as I said, I am not into the position of same-sex marriage. Civil union, well, there's partnership and of course, all the prevailing relationships as well as rights can be legislated, but not that marriage.
Yes, that's a very good point. I would like to agree, but I come from the perspective that in order to really breathe life to the ideal of granting equal protection under the law to everyone, we have to uniform or to apply uniformly labels. And yes, marriage may be a play in semantics. You can call a civil union and give it all of the trappings of a valid marriage, but call it a civil union. The thing is, marriage has a cultural significance to it, a societal significance to it, such that if you create another institution for the minority, the LGBTQ community, you are condemning them to become the other. They are different from us. And in a way, that by itself is already a form of discrimination that, in my opinion, is not germane to the purposes of the law, because their only difference from myself, who happens to be a heterosexual, is their gender preference. We might be aligned in all other things, and I do not think that's a reason to deny them of that secular institution of marriage.
Very interesting discussion so far.
Definitely.
Unfortunately, the 6 minutes is up.
Yes,
Like that
yes,
came
yes.
by so quickly.
Yep.
And for now, we'll have to take a short break. When we return, closing reflections and final questions. This is Abogado.
The legendary quiz master is back.
We heard you. So we're bringing back intelligence to Philippine TV with Billionaire Quizbee. Billionaire Quizbee will feature questions on science and technology, arts and literature, mathematics, history and geography, social sciences, and general information. We look forward to seeing you rise to the challenge and compete for the title of the very first Billionaire Quizbee champion.
Ang bawat issue, mas matagal nang tatalakayin. At ang bawat anggulo, mas masusing susuriin.
Dahil ang bawat balita siguradong may agenda. Ako po si Willard Cheng at makakasama na ni Corina Sanchez Rojas at Pinky Webb na maghahatid ng mga balitang dapat niyong malaman.
6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. na ang agenda. Dito lang sa Billionaire News Channel.
Lisa, looking at you. Lisa! Lisa! Alright!
Ferdy Salvador, Trade Talks. The Highlight, 11 a.m. on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. History unfolds, and Billionario News Channel is there first. A moment in faith will lead the way in exclusive coverage as the world welcomes Pope Leo XIV, the holiness, the hope, and the history as it happens. Because when the world watches, you deserve to see it first. Billionario News Channel, your trusted source of news and information. When the nation demanded answers, we delivered with power, precision, and prestige. Wall-to-wall coverage, real-time reporting from every major race and every corner of the country. Billionario News Channel and DWAR Abante Radio led the way with record-breaking coverage that kept the country informed, engaged, and ahead of the curve. We didn't just cover the election, we led the nation through it. First to call, first to explain, first in trust. Your voice, 2025 Election Agenda.
Welcome back. And our topic, should same-sex marriage be legalized in the Philippines? We have Attorney Darwin Angeles and attorney Marilu Arzaga-Mendoza, advocating for and advocating against the proposition respectively.
We now turn to final reflections. Attorney Darwin, you have 2 minutes.
Right. So, in a democracy, majority rules. And the rules are laid down by the Constitution and enacted by laws. The LGBTQ community, being a minority, lies an inherent disadvantage because their interests are not aligned with that of the majority. But I think the majoritarian nature of democracy is not an absolute bar in enacting a law that favors or accommodates minorities such as the LGBTQ community. We have laws to that effect already, which I have mentioned earlier. And the LGBTQ community is entitled to equal protection by the state because it is one of the most vibrant, active communities in the world and a very important pillar of national prosperity. They are among our most talented citizens. So our commitment to democracy requires that for these people, let us give them equal protection of the law. Our Constitution ordains that government shall build a just and humane society and a regime of rule of law that must include equality as a cornerstone. So for me, national posterity, even the moral fiber of our nation will be built and strengthened if we encourage everybody to assume the voluntary obligations of marriage, to channel together common resources and build a family, which is an important foundation of our Philippine democracy. Thank you.
Marilu,
Yes.
your turn.
The fabric of the Constitution, founded on having a family, is between a wife and a husband, or a man and a woman, to create a family. Such creation of a family recognizes procreation. The universal, as well as the humanity's DNA or genetics, is of course always focused on a man and a woman. That's the society. That's the place where we're at. And the uniformity of the application of the laws does not exist at all on different kinds of persons or things. Henceforth, meaning equality is for equals. A man and a woman for marriage is totally distinct and different from each other. And the Constitution, as well as the enabling law, uphold, and I do uphold, the divine creation of a family created by God. Yes.
Okay, well said. Attorney Mike and I will now ask one question each. Let's begin with Attorney Mike's question.
Thank you so much, partner. Talagang maganda talaga yung discussion natin ngayon. No? Very meaty, very engaging, very convincing. Kaya nga, siguro, my question to both of you is this. Sa ngayon, when you look at the surveys, there seems to be already a change. If you look at the surveys perhaps 10, 20 years ago at the surveys now, nakikita natin na mas acceptable na ang mga gay, homosexual, lesbian, LGBT community, mas acceptable na sa mga Pilipino. If I'm not mistaken, more than a majority already accept them, that they're part of society, they can be productive members of society, and they can be just any other citizen. But pag ang tanong naman ay, pumapayag ba kayo sa same-sex marriage? Medyo tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung opposition. No, may laban pa rin. Parang hindi pa rin acceptable, I guess because yun nga, Katoliko tayo, at matagal na tayo naging Katoliko, 300 years of Spanish rule and all that. So, baka naman siguro at this point in time, maybe that will change, and chances are it will change. But maybe at this point in time, wherein there's acceptability of what you are, but there's not much acceptability yet kung paano nyo ma-legalize yung pagsasama nyo. Baka naman pwedeng middle ground sa ngayon. Yung sinasabi mo nga, attorney, na baka yung civil union na lang or partnerships, no, to be governed, of course, with certain laws, but at the same time, not offending or accepting the reality that right now, the perception of most people really is that hindi pa nila tinatanggap ang same sex. Maybe perhaps I can start with...
Social reform is a process. So it exists as a continuum in time. And I remember during the oral arguments, one of the justices, I believe it was Justice Leonen, he made this point that in the United States, where Obergefell versus Hodges was rendered, the decision there constitutionalizing same-sex marriage, it didn't come overnight. it was the product of decades of struggle by the LGBTQ community. And there were a lot of precedents even that were litigated all the way to the US Supreme Court on that point. So on the matter of finding a middle ground, well, that is definitely, I think, the goal of legislation and public policy. So, and I think there is a lot of steps already being done by the government along that line. Like I mentioned, for example, the 2020 opinion of the Insurance Commission saying that insurable interest can be recognized for the taking of life insurance by one homosexual partner in favor of the life of another homosexual partner. And that's a step. So I think there can be an aggregation of similar steps, perhaps, to humanize our laws. So until we get to a point that society, because we cannot force a change of perception that is deeply ingrained in the Filipino psyche overnight as well. So I think that would be an acceptable middle ground for the moment until that time comes when Filipino society is indeed ready for same-sex marriage.
Well, yes, Attorney Marilu.
I like the trajectory of your statement. But, you know, I just want to make it clear that there is no condemnation on these people. That's what you're saying. No, we don't have to hate them.
Yes.
In fact, we have to help them and
Yes.
open avenues for them to better understand how were they created by God. And it's only upon understanding such creation vis-a-vis the laws, I think they will better understand. And when you say, maybe time will come, I don't know, but I still insist I am not
Not in favor for same-sex marriage.
yes.
But
Right.
for me, I will leave my religious beliefs on the side so that I can ask a question based on just the premise of a secular state. So the question would be, going back to whether we can have same-sex marriage, can it be done legally under the framework of our existing Philippine Constitution? So that regardless of all the religious beliefs that we may have individually, based on what we have in our Constitution, is it possible legally?
Inevitably, we cannot legislate on a piecemeal process. Always, the way I look at it all the time is to go ahead and take a look at the general viewpoint. Yes, let's say secular. However, you cannot deny the fact that there is marriage. And that marriage, for me, I have to know what marriage is. From the etymological viewpoint of what marriage is, it's always between a man and a woman. And as far as legislating a law, why not? But again, I would be one of the great oppositors of that because I cannot totally divorce the fact that marriage is a divine institution created, even the state protects it. When you're saying about what the Constitution says, the Constitution does not allow it, nor does it prohibit. However, you know, again, you taught statutory construction. You do not just take a piecemeal, but you get to see the whole gamut. And plus the enabling law itself, in conjunction with both, it does not allow. And legislation, it may be, but as to the acceptance and to the framers of the law, we do not know how much of those will be endorsing such.
Well, Attorney Darwin started off earlier with this opening statement about the separation of church and state as being enshrined as well in our Constitution. Is it possible to have a type of marriage recognized by law that, again, recognizes the differences in religious beliefs? Meaning, if you have atheist couples that don't belong to any religion, will the state recognize their marriage that is according to a non-church-based wedding?
Well, if I may, the Philippine law already provides for that because Code of Muslim Personal Laws recognizes the concept of Muslim marriage. So that is a recognition that the state's power to define marriage as a secular institution is already an operative fact. It's already there. It's given.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
the fact...
Yeah, go ahead. So yes, so I guess from there, then
Yeah, the
we can
yes.
separate it from this
Yes.
view, I suppose, like from what's in the Bible, and what type of rights do we grant to same-sex couples? Can they inherit from each other? Can the laws of succession apply to them?
Yes. Your statement is very compelling that already there is segregation. And you know, if that ensues, it's going to be a very chaotic society. Very chaotic. Now, as far as your question is concerned, can it be legislated? Why not? Why not? But as to its feasibility or operational, you know, the framers, still these are people, these are personas who endorse their thoughts and all points of law. And I think the influencing factors, you know, the only thing is I tried to go through, peruse the history. Yes, other countries, how many? Only 33 countries? Even our country has been exposed to it, but still it's stagnant. Nobody wants to go ahead and move forward to it. What's the fear? I think because of the underpinning of morality.
Right.
Well, that was really very interesting, partner, Attorney Karen.
Very
Also,
interesting.
We touched the legal ramifications. Of course, there's the religious implications, and of course, the practicality. But Attorney Karen, maybe this is a redundant question, but what do you think really stayed with you tonight?
Yeah, I think for me, there are different aspects to this discussion. One is the legal part. After all, we are four lawyers here discussing. And of course, for the public watching, the question would be, at the end of the day, can it be done in the Philippines? And what I'm getting, from my understanding as a consensus in this table, is that yes, it can be done legally without violating our constitution.
No.
Is that correct? No?
No, that's not my posture.
You'd have to also amend the constitution.
Yes.
Is that the case?
See, for me, humanity, it can be done. Whatever you do, you can do. But the point of the matter is, what is the underpinning, the morality? See, the law, when the law is codified or promulgated or instituted, it's always, you do this, and then you won't be
But which
punished.
provision of the Constitution prohibits same-sex marriage?
It does not. As we have been discussing, it does not prohibit, nor does it grant.
Yeah.
However, you take that in conjunction with the enabling law, which is the family code, it specifically states a man and a woman.
Yeah. So I guess, but to go back then, from the Philippine Constitution, you can legislate it without violating the Constitution,
I
because
guess
there's no
it's-
prohibition
Yes, I think
in the
it's a
Constitution.
matter of philosophy, because it's it ultimately informs your perspective of how you view the laws and how expansive or limited the government's powers are. When they legislate something on something as fundamental as one's liberty to choose who you want to become your partner and spend the rest of your life with. And of course, I respect the natural law view that there is a one ordained by God, a concept of marriage ordained by God. But as a student of legal philosophy, I can also say that there is a different view of legal theory that views law as a social construct and can be adapted by society according to what society requires. And my only proposition is that I think it has come to a point that maybe our society needs an equalizing factor to elevate and balance the plight of our LGBTQ brethren. Thank you.
Well, we had a very, very
I can see Attorney
engaging.
Marilu still wants to talk. Unfortunately, we're out of time, no?
We should get
Kailangan part 2.
We should have a part 2. Definitely part 2, and we can talk about the history as well as the legal philosophy, the spiritual. So anyway, again, I guess we thank Attorney Darwin Angeles and Attorney Marilu for a powerful, respectful exchange of views.
Same-sex marriage is a legal question, but also a question about who we are as people and what kind of equality we believe in. The answers won't come easy, but the conversation must begin.
Yes, partner. And that's the mission of our show, Abogado, to foster dialogue, challenge assumptions, and inspire open-minded reflections.
This is Abogado. Good night.
Good night.